Perfect. Perfect.
This is the Battlefield series, one of EA's most iconic and lucrative franchises, which at one point was considered one of the very few competitors to the juggernaut of a franchise known as Call of Duty. While the series has certainly experienced a series of peaks and valleys when it comes to the critical and commercial success of its entries, one of the best games in the series would release in 2016, that of course being the acclaimed and wildly successful Battlefield 1. While the game would naturally have a thriving, passionate online scene, to say that its multiplayer was a perfect experience would be a fallacy. See, a player by the name of Spartan Hoplite would inexplicably become permanently banned from Battlefield 1's servers after allegedly cheating or hacking to obtain his astonishingly high score of 202 kills and a measly 8 deaths. At a cursory glance, this seems like a blatantly obvious instance of cheating, but in reality, Spartan Hoplite was a virtuoso of Battlefield 1. In fact, he actually has a YouTube channel that proudly displays his impressive expertise. So why was he banned? Well, the answer lies within Battlefield 1's anti-cheating system known as Fair Fight. See, Fair Fight attempts to locate and detect cheaters by scouring for events or actions that it deems impossible to accomplish without the use of hacks or cheating software. The problem with this, however, is that Fair Fight almost exclusively looks for statistics and actions as opposed to accounting for a player having an extremely immense amount of skill at the game. So what does this mean? Simple. It means that Spartan Hoplite was banned for simply being too adept at Battlefield 1. This is what I'm talking about today. Gamers that were banned from video games for truly bizarre reasons. Enjoy! Alright, so let's kick off this list by talking about one of the most laughably flawed launches in relatively recent gaming history, and no, I'm not talking about this piece of shit. We're saving that for another video. I'm talking about Fallout 76. Good God almighty, Fallout 76 was a catastrophic failure when it launched back in 2018. It was Bethesda's pitiful attempt at branching out and making a Fallout entry that placed almost exclusive emphasis on multiplayer. And on paper, that honestly wasn't even an awful idea, but good God, Bethesda had little to no understanding of how to create a fully functional Fallout experience intended to be played online. There were bugs, performance issues at the wazoo, and pre-order bonuses that barely resembled the initially advertised product, and just about any other disastrous facet of a botched game release that you could imagine. However, some of the most notorious events in the game's history stemmed from server admins aggressively swinging the ban hammer like an agitated judge during a tense court session.
It's time to pay for your crimes! Take that!
See, early on during Fallout 76's launch, there were copious amounts of exploits that players ruthlessly abused because there were little to no consequences for partaking in such events. Players had gained access to the game's developer room, a staple of many Bethesda games, which obviously wasn't meant to be uncovered in Fallout 76, because it's a multiplayer game. After this, Bethesda would initiate a widespread series of bans to the players that used or had access to these developer room items. But the problem is that they essentially tagged the items taken from the developer room and not the players themselves, which resulted in some players receiving said items as a gift, only to be executed on the spot by Bethesda's admin team despite technically doing nothing wrong. Now, that's one of many stories pertaining to Fallout 76's misguided bans, but there's one example that remains as this game's most notorious, an event that I like to call the ammo debacle. In February of 2019, a mere 3 months after the game's initial release, a player by the name of Glorf12 had accrued over 900 hours of playing Fallout 76, which leads me to believe that he either has the patience of a saint, or was stuck with this game as his sole Christmas present, and decided to make lemons out of lemonade instead of going postal and mailing a pipe bomb in Todd Howard's P.O. box.
I found the source of the ticking! It's a pipe bomb!
Yeah!
Well, Glorf12 was dedicated to grinding the game out and earning everything in the game through legitimate means, as opposed to cheating and risking a potential ban from Bethesda. See, Glorf12 discovered that the Bandolier perk acquired in the game actually bestowed the player with a staggering 90% decrease to ammunition weight, which is a massive benefit. This means that the originally burdensome task of scavenging ammo and trudging along like an anemic slug because you're dragging along 1.5 pounds more than your carrying capacity allows would now be a thing of the past. Toss in more than 5 bobby pins, however, and you're absolutely fucked. Tell him about it, Papa Todd.
16 times the
Carrying weight. But he didn't just abuse this perk in order to rack up on ammo. Oh, no. He also exchanged ammunition between his primary and secondary accounts depending on what weapon he was utilizing at the time. This came to the point where Glorf had attained over 100,000 pieces of ammunition, more specifically ultrasight, which is used for some of the more powerful weapons in the game. Now, at first glance, this might seem like a cut and dry case of cheating or manipulation based solely from a numbers perspective. Hell, there were actually some users who were quite skeptical of Glorf's pleas of innocence. In reality, Glorf was actually an extremely passionate Fallout 76 player that would often provide tutorials and guides, more specifically in the form of bountiful farming locations. In other words, Glorf knew this game inside and out and was more than likely just an extremely proficient and experienced player who earned his ammunition through legitimate means. But all it took was one email from Bethesda to completely alter the course of his Fallout 76 journey. See, Bethesda accused Glorf of cheating due to having a copious amount of ammunition in both his primary and secondary accounts, and reached the conclusion that he simply cheated or manipulated the game's variables in order to obtain such ammo, as they did not view this amount as feasible to obtain in a realistic amount of time. As to why they singled him out in particular, well, Glorf actually spoke on this specific matter and stated that some players were allegedly reporting him whenever they caught him transferring items and ammunition between his primary and secondary accounts, and he believed that this was the catalyst behind Bethesda's decision. Bethesda would ban both of Glorf's accounts, with no exceptions, and wouldn't provide him access to said accounts until they released another patch. But there were some reports that stated that Glorf was still banned by the time Fallout 76's next round of patch notes were ushered in. Regardless of the outcome, many players recall this moment as an infamous one in Fallout 76's rocky post-launch history, as it's one of the handful of moments where a player was erroneously banned for simply playing by the rules and being a little bit too invested in a video game. Stay classy, Bethesda. Alright, look, you can say whatever you want about the Watch Dogs series. Yes, the E3 trailer for the first game wasn't an accurate representation of what the final product would look like. Yes, the first game oversold itself by trying to compete with Grand Theft Auto 5, a game that garnered near-perfect review scores from critics and set a record-breaking milestone for video game sales, so much so that it's now considered the second highest-selling video game of all time. But damn it, I have a bit of a soft spot for the Watch Dogs series. Well, until you put Claire on the screen, then it becomes rock solid and it starts to hurt when I'm wearing jeans. I thought the first game was great despite some flaws, and the second game is one of my all-time favorite open-world games ever made. And then there's Watch Dogs Legion, the oddball conspiratorial uncle of the Watch Dogs family. It has some great ideas, and it's fun to talk to and engage with for 30 minutes or an hour if I'm being charitable, but then starts going on a diatribe about how the age of consent is a government myth, and you start to realize why he isn't invited to family gatherings anymore. See, Watch Dogs 2 was the end result of Ubisoft actually listening to their fans for once, as it was a commendable effort to rectify some of the issues and complaints that the first game had, while providing a multitude of new ideas to the table. If you ask me, Watch Dogs 2 is a kick-ass sequel in every sense, but even its comparatively more lighthearted tone and narrative wouldn't prevent the game from falling under controversy. Case in point, a notorious incident that left a Watch Dogs 2 player temporarily suspended from PlayStation Network after simply sharing a picture of a rather lewd incident that occurred in the game. See, not long after the game had first released, a user by the name of Goron2000 was messing around in Watch Dogs 2 when he accidentally killed a few female NPCs by means of a gas pipe. It's a little macabre, but nothing too out of the ordinary for an open-world game that allows you to freely wreak havoc if you choose to do so. However, upon closer examination of one of the NPCs, Goron noticed that the character model was quite meticulously detailed. Well, maybe a bit too much. After examining the body, Goron realized that the NPC came equipped with fully rendered female genitalia, which, contrary to popular belief, was somewhat of a rarity in games, even titles explicitly designed for more mature audiences. I mean, sure, games like Grand Theft Auto 4 had pushed the limits by displaying a guy's schlong in all of its grotesque phallic glory, but seeing a fully rendered hoo-ha in a video game was like a divorced middle-aged businessman having consensual intercourse with a woman without having to write a check to her afterwards. After experiencing this, Goron decided to take a screenshot of what he just witnessed and uploaded a picture of the anatomically accurate female NPC to his social media page. Not a big deal, right? It's explicit, sure, but this is an M-rated game after all. However, Goron made the critical mistake of uploading the screenshot using his PS4's built-in social media upload feature, which means that Sony would end up having a much easier time tracking down the origin of the post. Then by the time Goron had fired up his PS4 and opened up Watch Dogs 2, he noticed that something was a little bit off. None of the game's online features were functioning properly, and after attempting to log into his PSN account, he was greeted with a message from Sony that stated that he was banned from using the system's online services for a full week. What was this about? Well, you take a guess.
And you tell us if you've seen this guy, understand?
Yeah,
Okay.
Horrible!
That's right, Sony temporarily suspended his account due to the picture, and eventually went on to extend his suspension to a full month, believe it or not. But miraculously, this was only the beginning. After this particular event transpired, Ubisoft announced that it would be removing all traces of female genitalia from the game in the form of an update, but shockingly, they elected to leave the handful of nude male models completely unaltered. Both of these events would naturally lead to a flurry of opinions, with most of them leaning in favor of Goron, and in opposition to both Sony and Ubisoft for their responses to the whole ordeal. Thankfully, Sony opted to retract their original ban on Goron, but to this day, any remnants of lady parts have since been removed from Watch Dogs 2, while some of the guys are still somehow able to rock out with their counterculture lifestyles. It's one of the most peculiar cases of video game censorship, and an equally head-scratching circumstance of a player getting banned over a relatively trivial issue in the grand scheme of things. Alright, so you guys probably saw this one coming, but we're looking at one of the more recent ridiculous player bans, and it all starts with a game that is synonymous with internet culture, Roblox. Roblox is one of the most wildly successful and iconic video games in recent history. It has consistently raked in roughly 70 million players monthly, has inspired plenty of absurd internet memes, which in this day and age is practically free advertising, and continues to attract millions of players of all ages to its servers to this very day. However, with so many players flocking to Roblox in massive droves, you're bound to garner a few, let's say, less than savory players. See, Roblox, much like any other successful online video game, has attracted its fair share of bad apples in the past, and unfortunately, that trend still continues to this day. What kind of bad apples, you may ask? Well, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Predators. Yes, child predators. It's not necessarily the fault of the developers themselves, at least in isolation, but more so the lack of effective moderation or measures taken by the Roblox team. And I'm not talking about the adults-only servers that can readily be accessed by kids. That's an entirely separate can of worms. I'm talking about predators that try to solicit minors into wildly inappropriate activities. And so, with the notable lack of proper moderation, a plethora of Roblox content creators started to take actions into their own hands, the most notable of which being Schlepp. For years, Schlepp was an avid Roblox player before an extremely revolting grooming situation that occurred in the game ended up altering the course of his life. After a series of struggles and hardships, he came back to Roblox and instead used his experience as a means of catching would-be child predators in the game, and essentially crafted an entire YouTube career out of it. In essence, Schlepp would conduct a sting operation, very much in a similar vein to something like Chris Hansen's To Catch a Predator series, or for a more contemporary equivalent, EDP Watch. Then, after catching the predators in the act and extracting information out of them, Schlepp would document this information and send the evidence to Roblox as a means of a prospective ban to said player. It was a win-win situation. Schlepp was sweeping criminals off of the digital streets, Roblox was effectively receiving unpaid moderation from Schlepp, and a bevy of other notable names in the Roblox predator catching scene, which, as absurd as it sounds, is its own niche category of Roblox content on YouTube, and Roblox would become less of a breeding ground for predatorial behaviors. Well, that is until Roblox themselves started catching wind of this ordeal. See, in August of 2025, Roblox eventually responded to Schlepp's numerous predator catching operations. How, you may ask? Well, let me put it this way, I'll take the worst fucking response you can imagine for 200, Alex. In a puzzling turn of events, Roblox opted to send Schlepp a cease and desist letter for his predator hunting, threatened to sue him if he proceeded to do so, and went on to terminate all of his Roblox accounts. Their rationale was that they didn't want vigilante groups on the platform, possibly hindering the efforts of law enforcement to investigate the aforementioned predators. And while I can somewhat see where they're coming from to an extent, was sending a cease and desist to the guy the most logical course of action? I don't think so. Especially considering that Schlepp has stated in the past that he has attempted to reach out and work with Roblox to catch the predators, only to be left with practically no response. But then, Schlepp uploaded a video detailing the cease and desist letter he received, as well as his termination from Roblox's servers. And while the YouTube community was justifiably enraged at what transpired, what ensued was one of the most widespread campaigns against the Roblox company for the mishandling of the situation. Numerous big-name YouTubers would signal boost the ordeal and show support to Schlepp, Roblox content creators would distance themselves from Roblox partner program, and for once it seemed like the internet community was actually unified on something instead of sending death threats because someone preferred Majora's Mask over Ocarina of Time. And just to add a little extra spice to the mix, Schlepp confirmed that he would be working alongside none other than Chris Hansen of Dateline NBC fame to create a documentary about Roblox's extensive history of housing predators, and would also be countersuing Roblox. It is one of the most notorious instances of a player getting banned, and it's only a matter of time before we get to see the resolution of this controversial ordeal. Now, in this next segment, I'm going to be talking about a game that you may or may not be fond of, that being Wait, what? Hold on, technical difficulties. Honey, I paid the power bill this time, I swear. Okay, well, this could work to my advantage. I'm just gonna Close my eyes and Ooh. You've been bamboozled. What you thought was the end result of a severe lack of financial responsibility was actually the sponsor of this video, Manta Sleep. See, if you're like me, you love video games, making videos centered around said video games, and most importantly, getting a good night's rest. I love playing me some games until it hits about 9 o'clock at night, and then my inner elderly person kicks in and I'm usually knocked out cold by 9:30. But sometimes it doesn't always pan out that way, which is why Manta Sleep is here to assist me. See, Manta specializes in crafting quality sleep masks that are designed to induce some of the best sleep possible. Toss out your old raggedy sleep mask, because Manta's sleep masks are made with top-notch quality. My old method used to involve tossing a t-shirt over my face and calling it a night. But even that caused problems, because even the faintest shred of light would ultimately hinder my sleeping schedule. But now with Manta Sleep, I don't have to worry about this. Just place it on your face like so, adjust the straps, and almost immediately, your eyes are covered with true 100% blackout. But how does it feel, I hear you ask? Well, I'm happy to report that unlike your average dollar store sleep mask, Manta's masks are crafted to ensure maximum comfort. There's no pressure on your head or eyes, the design feels like a pillow is warmly embracing your eyelids, and heck, while I was sleeping, I almost forgot I had these on. That's how ridiculously comfortable these feel. And if you're still a bit reluctant to give these bad boys a try, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret. Manta Sleep is offering an exclusive discount to all of you guys that are watching this video. Simply head on over to this link and use the code CSHIFT for 10% off your order. Once again, that's the code CSHIFT for 10% off your order. So what are you waiting for? Better quality sleep is only one Manta mask away. Thank you, Manta, for sponsoring the video, and without further ado, let's get back to it. Okay, so do you guys remember the absurd amount of hype that Grand Theft Auto 5's online mode had generated? I mean, Grand Theft Auto 5 was already a hotly anticipated game, but my god, the online multiplayer mode, which released a little while after the game had initially launched, was kind of a landmark event in video game history. Everyone was talking about it. There were entire careers that were conceived out of people playing GTA Online and then uploading it to YouTube. My friends in the neighborhood I lived in were linking up on the game every night. And then there was me, who lived under a roof that barred any Grand Theft Auto game from touching my console. So I was more than content playing Disney Infinity, which was released around the time, but could that game let you go on a killing spree, run over pedestrians while listening to smooth jazz, and then contract an esoteric STD in the span of 20 minutes? I don't think so. So you know damn well that my innocent ass thought that foreplay referred to a golf technique until I turned 16. In other words, GTA Online was nothing short of a smashing success, but that did not mean that Rockstar was perfect at moderating an online experience. You see, for years, GTA Online has been plagued with a vast array of hackers that have tarnished would-be enjoyable experiences for a multitude of players.
Uh-oh. He's in God mode? Bro is on a God mode Mark II.
But most of the hackers in question have either been banned or temporarily suspended from the game's online servers. However, I bet you did not expect a case in which an innocent player actually became framed for something that a different user enacted. This is the case of the framing of the Seventh Taco. In May of 2015, an avid GTA Online player named the Seventh Taco uploaded a video showcasing an egregious hacker instantly killing everyone in the server within a matter of mere seconds. However, it wasn't as simple as a malicious attack on all of the unsuspecting players, as the hacker in question was able to make it seem like the Seventh Taco was the one who instigated the glitched attack on the kill messages. If you couldn't put two and two together, the hacker was blatantly framing the Seventh Taco for an attack that he didn't commit, all while the Seventh Taco himself had clearly shown on the video that he didn't do anything. Where did this stem from? Well, it was around this time that hacking had become rampant with GTA Online servers due to the advent of the PC port of the game that had been released in 2015, the same year that this particular event took place. Some of the mods that you can download for GTA 5 can bypass the online server's modding restrictions and effectively allow the hacker to use a cheat menu in order to achieve whatever they want. Some of these particular cheat menus are equipped with a blame feature that essentially allows you to make it seem like another player is performing the kills that you're actually committing. Apparently, this was actually a widespread issue in 2015, as there were numerous documented instances of players falling victim to a malicious hacker blowing up every player on the map and then pointing blame at them in order to frame them and consequently get kicked from the server. At a bare minimum, players that were falsely accused of this would get kicked and reported to Rockstar, and at worst, they would have their accounts terminated, which unfortunately happened to the Seventh Taco. Instead of further investigating the issue at hand, Rockstar looked at the problem with a brief glance, believed that the Seventh Taco had committed the act, and swiftly banned him. What's funny about this is that he actually preemptively uploaded a YouTube video in order to plead his case and prevent a potential ban from Rockstar, but even then, it was too late. The damage was already done, and despite his metaphorical instrument not being out of tune, it was Rockstar that took the J.K. Simmons whiplash approach to the Seventh Taco's account. God rest the poor guy's soul.
Tell me it's not you, Elmer Fudd. Do you think you're out of tune?
Yes.
Then why the fuck didn't you say so?
Yeah, thank you for your motivating and inspirational speech. I'm gonna go put my head in a wood chipper now. While his original video isn't on YouTube anymore, there were reports that stated that the hacker who orchestrated this event allegedly had a gamer tag called Fuck Rockstar. Though, admittedly, I'm a little bit skeptical about this claim. However, if that is the case, that is quite a tragic, albeit slightly humorous circumstance. What's even more frustrating is that, to this day, Rockstar has still maintained a lackluster approach to banning the right players, as GTA Online's addition of an updated anti-cheat feature actually led to a multitude of accounts being erroneously banned, though granted, they did eventually get their accounts back. While it's not entirely known if the Seventh Taco ever regained access to his GTA Online account after providing the damning evidence, one thing's for certain: Rockstar better bring their A-game to GTA 6's online mode, well, whenever that comes to fruition. Okay, so this next entry is actually kind of understandable, but the player base's reaction was so absurdly goofy and humorous that I just had to mention this one. Man, let me tell you something, as a 2000s kid, I am so grateful that I was blessed with the top-notch kid-centric multiplayer computer games that were around at the time. You got Pop Tropica, Toontown, Fusion Fall, and arguably the most recognizable example, Disney's legendary Club Penguin. Club Penguin is like a time capsule of the good old days, back when Flash was still supported on most web browsers, before getting brutally executed via the digital guillotine. Club Penguin was one of Disney's attempts at capitalizing off of the surprising success of numerous other child-oriented MMO titles, the other of course being Toontown. And to say that it was a success would be an understatement of the utmost degree. The designs were simple yet eye-catching, the social features were fun and engaging, the numerous secrets and hidden items strewn about the map were a blast to find. There's just a certain je ne sais quoi about Club Penguin that's kind of tough to fully articulate, but once you've played it, you'll get the gist of what I mean. Now, naturally, Club Penguin is a kid-friendly experience through and through. This is Disney after all. Having kids' films with adorable woodland creatures getting capped by a hunter is fine and dandy. Seeing a little boy violently contort and transform into a donkey so he works in the salt mines till the day he fucking dies is a-okay. But have Mickey Mouse drop Quentin Tarantino's second favorite word, and Disney's lawyers will come down on you more aggressively than a lady of the night trying to earn her pay. So naturally, Club Penguin would often censor or outright ban players for partaking in taboo activities. We're talking about cursing or using any type of profane language, trying to solicit inappropriate activities from underage users. Roblox, take notes.
I had a crush on you in junior high.
I just got here.
Like it matters.
And just about anything that could even remotely be considered obscene. Now, naturally, if you were to play Club Penguin, the last thing you'd want to do is attempt to get banned from the game, right? Well, let me introduce you to a niche yet briefly viral sensation known as Club Penguin ban speedrunning. Because the internet does just what it does best, and turns just about anything into a competitive speedrunning scene.
Yes, 13 seconds. Look at that.
If only this could apply to the legal world. Maybe that restraining order put on me would have landed on my doorstep quicker.
Is this for that incident with the pickle?
Well, this started back when Club Penguin had announced that its servers would be permanently shutting down after 12 years of operation. Naturally, this would lead to a flurry of emotions: disappointment, outrage, severe depression, anything you could think of. However, some players decided to use this inevitable closure as a means of breaking the rules a bit before the game would shut down. They decided to add getting banned from Club Penguin to their bucket list because visiting Disneyland or Mount Rushmore was a bit out of their budget. In an attempt to get banned as quickly as possible, players would start a new account, enter the game as normal, and then immediately spam a massive influx of curse words before swiftly getting banned from the servers. The most notable example comes in the form of Button Walls' video, in which he set a new record at the time by getting banned in just under 2 minutes. It was absurd, kind of counterintuitive if you wanted to play Club Penguin one last time before the game shut down, and downright hilarious, but that's what made it so damn entertaining. After this video went moderately viral, an entire speedrunning scene dedicated to getting banned from the game as briskly as possible was conceived, and a myriad of new records were uploaded, with the current world record being a mere 37 seconds and 100 milliseconds. You wanna know the best part? This record has yet to be broken to this very day. Who would have thought that intentionally getting banned would have evolved into an entire online speedrunning scene? Alright, so we're gonna end this list by talking about the king of absurd ban stipulations. You love them, you hate them, and then you love them again whenever they release another Game of the Year contender. It's Nintendo. Nintendo has had a very extensive history of banning or even taking legal action against players for a litany of reasons, but one of the most puzzling instances occurred when a player did the unthinkable. He tried to rejuvenate interest in a game. Not by hacking or trying to make an unofficial fan game, mind you. All he did was utilize harmless glitches to enhance the game's experience. I'm talking about Super Mario Maker. See, the Wii U was a flawed console, there's no doubt about it. But god damn it, this thing had some excellent console exclusive titles. We're talking Super Mario 3D World, Bayonetta 2, Smash Bros. 4, and of course, case in point, Super Mario Maker. If you've never played or even heard of Super Mario Maker, it's essentially a game that grants players the ability to construct and share their own Mario levels to other people, with 4 different Mario games that you can use as the level's foundation. It was an ingenious move by Nintendo, and it was easily my most played game of that year, and while it's since been overshadowed by its more refined and thoroughly fleshed out sequel, Super Mario Maker is still remembered fondly by Nintendo's most diehard fans. Among those fans of the game was the massively passionate fan known by his username, the Psychro. He was massively invested in the game, so much so that he almost single-handedly rekindled public interest in the game long after the final content update had dropped. See, in around 2016 to 2017, I had a lot of conflicting reports about this, Nintendo had released the game's final update, which, mind you, took place roughly 1 to 2 years after the game's initial launch back in 2015. Many fans were disappointed at the fact that Nintendo was seemingly abandoning a title that could possibly continue to generate revenue for them if they continued to add more substantial content to the updates, but by this point, it was too late. The nail was firmly hammered into the coffin, and as a result, player interest began to gradually dwindle. That is, however, until the aforementioned player, the Skycrow, came into the picture. See, the Skycrow was a unique Mario Maker level designer, as he primarily fixated on experimenting with and searching for bugs and glitches in the game's level builder, and would then forge entire levels built around said bugs and glitches. It was actually a pretty novel concept at the time, and the Skycrow became somewhat of a legend in the Super Mario Maker community. For example, the Skycrow mentions that he once read a comment describing how shaking a lava bubble on a track, placing a mushroom on it, and then clicking undo would lead to some pretty bizarre results, which he then realized he could integrate into one of his levels. Now, at a glance, this seems like a win-win for all parties. The player gets to experiment with the game more, Nintendo is able to get more players attracted to the game without having to lift a finger, and everyone seemingly gets a happy ending. And no, I'm not talking about the one you'd get in a sequestered corner of a red light district. However, Nintendo was anything but pleased about these discoveries. Instead of simply allowing the Skycrow to work his magic and tinker with the game in order to create some truly one-of-a-kind levels, Nintendo opted to bust out the big guns and hired their second-best marksman to eradicate Skycrow's account with a ban. It was a morbidly depressing day for all Mario Maker fans, as one of the most unique level designers was now getting punished for his creative contributions to the game. And mind you, he wasn't using third-party software or hacks in order to achieve these unique levels, he was simply exploiting glitches that could be readily replicated in the game and designing levels around them. Why didn't Nintendo just patch the game if the glitches were causing them so much grief? Well, nobody truly knows. It's probably based on pure principle. You're designing levels in ways that are not originally intended, but that same argument gets annihilated by the fact that you have to complete your own level legitimately before it's allowed to get uploaded, and yes, all of Skycrow's levels were able to be beaten by conventional means. However, do you recall when I mentioned that Nintendo commissioned their metaphorical second-best marksman to eliminate his account? Well, they should have forked up the extra cash to get someone to shoot the head instead of the heart, because Skycrow discovered an exploit that allowed him to keep his account and by extension continue to upload levels. Since Nintendo bans users on a hardware level instead of a software level, Skycrow was able to transfer the data from one Wii U to another Wii U in order to recover his account, and dispelled the common belief that you would need to buy a new system every time you were banned. He simply obtained another Wii U console, and every time one of them received a ban, he would simply transfer the data to the other console. Rinse and repeat, and Skycrow was successfully able to circumvent Nintendo's series of bans on his account with relatively little hassle. No one really knows what the guy's been up to nowadays, as his last post was roughly a year ago.
So that was a fucking lie.
But we do know that he would continue to uncover glitches in Super Mario Maker 2 and share them on his YouTube channel. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some games to attend to, and oh, that makes me wonder. See, Sam, how's that pirate guy doing? You know, the one who talks about snowstorms or Dairy Queen blizzards, or was it Blizzard of Oz? That's a pretty great album. Ah, that makes sense. Well, keep an eye on him for me. I have some unfinished business on a little game called Battleborn. You know, the Overwatch competitor that 12 people remember? I enjoyed that one. Let's give it a shot. Alright, that's it. C-Sim, get the caramel popcorn and the Blame It on Jorge playlist, because we're going on a fucking lost media hunt.